All right, I'm going to take a couple minutes to explain in a basic way what right defaults is. This is a really deep topic, and there's a lot that goes into understanding what right defaults is, the ramifications of using it and not using it, and the different workflows. But we're not going to get into that. We're just going to go in and explain kind of what it is on a surface level, so that way you can pick your workflow. The reason this is an important topic is because this setting will fundamentally change, like I said, the workflow of your animations in your animator. Because what right defaults basically does is it grabs the state of your model for VRChat explanation's sake. On upload, it'll grab the state of your model and store that basically. And then whenever you're not animating something, it's going to return that back to its default state. So we're just going to kind of jump right into the visual explanation of what right default is. I think it's a lot easier to explain what it is from a visual point of view rather than me just talking at you. So to get that done here, I'm just going to go into play mode and view my animator here. So I have a little Among Us follower here. It's invisible, but basically what I want to do is turn it on. So I have my state here. This is for right defaults on, but I have my little animator set up here for toggling him on. So what I can do here is I can toggle him on and he'll show up. And if I toggle it off, we go back to this idle state that has no animation in it and he will be invisible. So right now, we haven't explicitly told the follower to disappear. Right now, Bright Defaults is taking care of that. So a perfect illustration of what this means is if I go into the follower and I actually turn him on by default and I load into the game. What's going to happen when I toggle him on, we're going to go to the on state and he's going to exist. But when I toggle him off, it's going back to the idle state, but he's still there. That's because we're not telling it to do anything here. We've uploaded the model with uploaded in air quotes. We've gone into play mode with the little guy enabled. So when we try to disable him, he's not going to be able to disable because your default state, your right default, is going to be with the follower enabled. So he will never disappear. So this follows that, you know, maybe if you want him to be on when you spawn, but you want to be able to turn him off, just make an off animation. So yes, that will fix it. However, we can also go ahead and take a look at the right defaults off approach, which is exactly what I said, where you have a off state and an on state. So because we have explicit states for off and on, it doesn't matter how we upload the model. We're explicitly telling the follower what to do in every single state. So you can kind of already see the illustration of what right defaults is. So we can also go into facial expressions. This is another common issue with people switching from right defaults on to off, is facial expressions break. So we can kind of give you an illustration here. So you can already kind of deduce from what we talked about earlier that your facial expression animations are going to be animating certain shape keys, right? I'm only animating, basically this one is inconsequential. Basically, I'm animating these two shape keys, right? And when I go into the little expressions here, you can see I have these facial expressions, right? So with right defaults on, in each of these animations, I'm only animating the shape keys that I intend to use to make this face. And this works with right defaults on because the animator, when you upload the model, like we said, is basically reverting all of the animated properties back to how they were when you uploaded the model, right? So if I go ahead and switch to right defaults off, you can see it works fine. But if I make different expressions, you can see everything starts to overlap. Right? Let me get rid of these gizmos. So everything's starting to overlap. You can kind of see it's a little wonky. You know, that's not what it's supposed to look like. So what we do, a common solution, is we make a reset layer and we put that above our facial expressions layer. And this reset animation is going to animate all of these properties that we're animating in our facial expressions here. It's going to animate them all off. And the reason this works is because your animator will execute from the top down. So everything below, if you will, everything below is going to basically overwrite everything above it. So what this means is essentially we're writing this default state constantly, but because our facial expressions layer is below our reset layer, the facial expressions layer can overwrite certain properties. So I don't know why I did that. So now, because we have this reset layer, everything's working fine. So now you can kind of see again why write defaults will change your workflow fundamentally. Obviously, write defaults off is the way that VRChat recommends, and it's definitely the way that I recommend, and a lot of people in the tech community recommend. But ultimately, that decision is up to you. Choosing write defaults on doesn't break anything. It's not going to break anything for the most part. It's just something that VRChat says not to do, due to the way their workflow works and the way that your workflow should work. In any case, that's all I got.